Hi, I'm Chantel Aguilar,
And I'm Elise Cole.
and we are co-founders of AIM Learning Community.
We're really pleased to be able to represent our school in relation to this course, PME 810.
We're going to begin by looking at what we accomplished in Module 2 for curriculum design. We looked at the different curriculums. We looked at subject-based, learner-based, and problem-solving based, with the designs, the curriculum focus, the role of the teacher, the philosophy, and the sources. And now we will begin making our connections with planning, instruction, and assessment approaches in different curricular designs.
The social efficiency approach to curricula originated in the early 1900s as a result of urbanization and industrialization. They equated success in school with performance, and so they enacted a number of standardized tests, and they put together a plan of learning that really emphasized rote recall. The planning for this approach was very predetermined, and there were set curricular outcomes. The planning was not ongoing, it was done in advance, so teachers were teaching to the test. They had a very mechanistic theory of knowledge acquisition.
As a result of the planning, the instruction took a one-size-fits-all and leading to conformity. So they did rote learning, and it was not individualized. There was a set plan, there was set content or what was expected to be learned in the curricula. It was taught usually one way, and it was expected that all students just learned that way. It was very teacher-centered, where the teacher would get up and kind of bestow upon the students all their wonderful knowledge.
And so assessment in this approach also was, again, very standardized and teacher-centered. Testing was done at the end of a unit, so all of the knowledge was imparted to the students. They were expected to memorize it and then regurgitate it for a test at the end. And this was considered a true assessment of what they had learned.
Which was kind of like what we were reading was the product rather than the process.
Right. And the assessment was considered very separate from the instruction. So no assessment was conducted throughout the process of teaching, but instead relied heavily on the end result, which was the test.
So the different curriculum connections that we made were that this approach would be manifested, I would guess, in a subject design, discipline design, broad field design, correlation design, and process design. So now we're going to look at cognitive and social constructionist approach to curriculum. When we look at this approach, we're looking at the cognitive processes. Cognitive abilities are developed, so they believe that everyone can learn, that it is not just something that you are born with, but that everybody has true potential. We believe in this approach with authentic learning, so you're applying things to real life application of knowledge, it has meaning to you, global and community connections, positive learning environments, and attitudes. We decided to include some of the pictures from our own learning community.
Yay!
So in the first one, this one over here, you see it? We have a group of learners, and they are all working at different grade levels through their own individualized plan, the way they like to learn best.
In the second photo, this one here, we have a student who has brought in his guinea pigs. We really like to encourage the students to share their interests, their passions, and their talents with each other. So this was a day when he was allowed to bring in something that he knew a lot about. He shared the information. The students listened very attentively. And it was an opportunity for them to get to know each other and to show us what they know and what they're passionate about.
In the third picture, one of our little guys was very interested in exploring bugs, insects, and plants. And so we provided him with the equipment to go ahead and do that. And when he came back, he was able to describe many things on his own without even us
researching it.
Yeah, researching it, or us as teachers having to intervene. So we had a discussion, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in planning and assessment and instruction when we go further into this. But a lot of this produced a discussion with our children, and we were able to hear what they're experiencing and hear what they're learning and dig deeper into their interests.
The TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson really resonated with us. He made a point of saying that there are 3 assumptions that can be made about human beings. Human beings are diverse, they are curious, and they are creative. And we really like to take those 3 assumptions and use them to inform our decisions about planning, about instruction, and also about the way that we assess each student. His quote is, "If you can light the spark of curiosity in a child, they will learn without any further assistance. Very often, children are natural learners."
If you haven't watched the video, please do. I guarantee a laugh.
Yes, for sure. Planning for the constructivist approach involves setting up the classroom to have a positive atmosphere for learning and to for each student to succeed in his or her own way. So we spent a lot of time, if you can see in the photo over there at the far side, that's right. This was how we set up our classroom. We wanted it to look inviting, we wanted it to look exciting, and to have various places for the students to do their work. Those who wanted to sit at a desk, on a ball, or on a chair were welcome to do so, but they were also welcome to sit in smaller spaces, for example, under the loft or on top of the loft to do some of their work. More of the planning, as we put together our philosophies for the school, involved individualized goals for each student, flexible plans so that we could incorporate student interests and student needs. We realized that our plans needed to be ongoing. Making long-term plans was really just not possible when we considered each student as an individual. We needed time to get to know them, and we needed time to consider even their changing interests as we go throughout the year. So we had limited long-term planning. We really wanted to foster positive learning attitudes, so we did some reading for previous courses as well as for this one about how to foster students who have grit, who are willing to take on challenges, and who are willing to persevere through things that might be frustrating for them.
In our readings and in the videos, one of the main things that we're really looking at is inquiry, individualism, and the power of voice. And so it's kind of just listening to kids and what they really want to learn and what they're interested in, and try to tap into that. And it's really getting that spark going that we had talked about earlier. And once you can get that spark, and once kids can see it as relevant, that's part of our planning process. And it does take time. And we are finding that some of it is honestly just chatting with the kids and getting to know them and listening to what they have to say, and then finding that and somehow tapping into it. And so by doing that, we really try to make a comfortable learning environment. And how we do that is we try to have them understand that mistakes are very valuable and that they're not a bad thing, but they're learning experiences. We set up a community of learners where, yes, we may be teachers and the adults, but we also make mistakes. And so we tend to phrase things like, I wonder about that. They may say, for example, I have a little dog that shakes a lot. And there's like, why does he shake a lot? Well, he's very small. So they can come up with kind of their own knowledge that they know now. Then we kind of encourage them to ask I wonder questions. So you just asked, I wonder why he shakes. Let's go discover it. And so we can kind of tap into that. And so in that comfortable learning environment, we really focus as well on positive self-talk. Overt criteria for assessment. We need to know what we want the students to learn. So although they are looking at and they are exploring their own interests, us as teachers, we want to know and we need to kind of be able to guide them into what they need to learn, which is the curriculum knowledge. So we need to know what skills and what content they need to learn, and find a way to tie in their interests and how they learn best and how they maybe are assessed or how they're going to present or how they're going to explore. We're finding ways to then tie it into the curriculum to ensure their learning success. I didn't talk about.
In some of our extracurricular reading, we discovered a theory or a chart that outlines learning styles by Dunn and Dunn from 1987. It includes strategies for differentiated instruction in the classroom.
So when we look at learning styles, of course, we look at auditory, we look at visual, and we look at kinesthetic, mobility, and tactile. Oftentimes, we forget to consider things like the design structure. What does your room look like? What about temperature? How do the students like it? How do they like to sit? So that's kind of how we talked about like alternative seating arrangements in our classroom as well. Sometimes light and sound come into play, and we do have a lot of students that are very sensitive to sound, especially sound. So do they like it light? Do they like it a little bit more dim? Do they like it quiet or noisy? And ideally, it'd be nice to be able to provide those atmospheres for them. Sometimes we also need to take into consideration the individual, how they like to work with each other or alone. So sometimes they want to be alone. They don't really want to work with each other. Of course, we want to encourage cooperation. But sometimes they just want to kind of work alone and be alone in that thought process. Time of day, we have morning, afternoon, and evening, and we notice a lot of our students are more active and ready to learn, that their readiness levels are there in the morning. Sometimes we have a student that likes to come in the afternoon, and evenings would be very, very challenging for us. But I know that Summerhill, who came up with a school in 1921, was extremely alternative. That was something that he really looked at, was the readiness of the child. So depending on the time of the day or the atmosphere or their interest level, that was something that he really focused on and he believed in, that children were going to be ready to learn kind of on their own time because they are so different. And then we have intake, and we need to look at, are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Do they have food allergies? And all these things can contribute to how they're going to learn, which then influence how we are planning.
The nature of our instruction is a direct result of our planning. So here at AIM Learning Community, just like in the constructivist approach, we do a lot of teaching that's based on student interest. We have sort of a democratic sort of environment that allows students choices and a voice. We like to give the students opportunities to apply what we're learning or what they already know in a real life situation. We're very process focused. We like the idea of problem solving and project-based learning so that it gives them hands-on opportunities to learn and also hands-on opportunities for them to demonstrate their learning to us. Which brings me to the supportive technology. We use supportive technology to assist students who have challenges with reading and literacy in general, but we also use supportive technology to help us document our learning. So the students have learned to use programs such as Seesaw to demonstrate their learning to us in a way that doesn't require pencil and paper, because those sorts of skills may be an area that they're needing to work on. However, their cognitive abilities to explain and document using assistive technology is much higher. And so we're able to do assessment that way based on how we're teaching them to use the supportive technology.
In addition to that, we like to really focus on the fact that we are a community of learners. And in several of the readings and videos that we did, they really emphasized on a community of learners. In addition, we do peer-to-peer feedback and mentoring. We really, really encourage students to work together, to build on each other's strengths, to share their strengths, to be open and willing to ask for help when they need it, and to talk to each other and like their self-evaluation as well, and just to kind of reflect on how they're learning and how they have progressed. Collaborative learning is one of our main focuses, and our key word for this year is definitely respect. And so we really encourage students to work together. And we have a list of respectful ways to kind of disagree with people when we're talking, because we find a lot of times students will come with, oh, I know this because mommy said, or I know this because teacher said. And instead, we're trying to encourage the approach of, well, I think I heard this, or I think I remember this. How about we go research it and look it up and see what is possibly the facts, and how do we determine what is fact and what isn't. And lastly, we're really working on, and this approach also looks at global and communicative awareness. And the lady in Toronto named
Ursula Franklin.
We were very intrigued by her, and we are hoping to possibly one day visit her school. But that is something that they really focus on, is their global and community awareness, where they're chatting with kids from around the world. They really encourage students within the instructional process to think outside of the box, to take chances, and that's kind of what we look at as a community of learners, is that you're taking chances, you're trying things that you normally wouldn't want to try, and it's okay, and if you've been able to watch some of the videos, the students' feedback of their experience at that school is absolutely encouraging.
I think that we also try really hard here at our school to use phrases and instructional methods that are less certain. So instead of presenting information to the students like this is how it is, we try to use things like I think and what about if, and that gives them opportunity to question. And that's the whole basis of inquiry. So we try not to speak as certainly, leave some space for interpretation or opinion formation. We are a community of learners, and we often represent to the kids that we ourselves are students. We're in a master's program, and they know that. And we often talk to them about things that we're learning and ask them for feedback about some of the ideas that we read about.
So if you look at these three pictures, we have so many, but we tried to pick some of our favorites. The one in the middle is probably my favorite, so I'm going to actually start in the middle this time. And it was an opportunity when we were actually learning about money. We were learning about adding and subtracting, and we decided that we were going to take the students out to the store. And we were going to buy certain things anyway because we had a project of roasting pumpkin seeds and making applesauce. But as we were out in the community, the students were in charge of making choices of what they were going to buy, decide and make choices based on, okay, if we have this much money, how much can we buy? What is the best value for the quantity that you're getting? And at the register, we discussed and we added up how much it was going to cost, and then how we will pay the cashier and how they will get change in return.
So that takes us to assessment. Now, I have to admit, Chantel and I both have struggled a little with the alternative kind of assessment that goes with a school like this. We are familiar with rubrics. We're familiar with overt criteria. And in many cases, a lot of the ways that we can use for assessment that we've heard in the readings, we do them to an extent. But to restrict ourselves solely to this kind of assessment is actually a departure from the kind of teaching that we've been doing for the last 15 plus years. So in the readings that we've done, these are some of the assessment strategies. Close observation. This is something we do on a regular basis. I don't think, though, that we ever considered this an official type of assessment.
I think part of it is it can be very subjective rather than objective.
Right. Another way is self-evaluation or peer-to-peer evaluation. This is important when the students are asked to reflect on how successful were you today, or how successful were you this week, based on some of the goals that we set. I find that this is particularly important for the self-evaluation, but it can also be valuable when they're evaluating their peers. Another way that we can assess, because we are a very project-based learning style, are projects and demonstrations. The students are able to demonstrate their learning using 3D models, hands-on technology, any sorts of things that just work for them. We keep, as the two of us, we keep a record of little anecdotal observations that we see throughout the day. This is a challenge, of course, because it does mean that at some point, at least by the end of the day, that you take some time to reflect on what each of the students showed you that day. We also, as I mentioned, use Seesaw, which is an app that allows the students to actually collect their work and the things that they are very proud of, and ways to show their learning in a digital portfolio.
So what one of the key phrases were, and what we're planning on implementing in our classroom, was making learning visible. We really, really like that term, and that's something that we want to ask our students. How are you making your learning visible? We do a lot of one-on-one group discussions or small group discussions as well.
We're a small school.
We really are. And we liked something that they said was sometimes it's difficult to assess because there's not always a set mark. There's not necessarily a percentage or a grade number, even the levels like the 1, 2, 3, 4. But some of the suggestions that there were that it was more of a reflective process. Where there's, regular parent-teacher conferences, which as a small school we talk to the parents regularly, and classroom visits. So the parents are able to see and watch, and that's something Seesaw does as parents get to kind of jump in there, and we make videos of their kids maybe talking or reading or doing something. So the parents are seeing firsthand knowledge, that they're not just seeing and what they are believing is subjective, but that we actually have proof of what their child is doing. We talked about blogs, journals, and social media as well as a way of assessing. And we have a lot of those things kind of in place, some of them for parents to see, and we started a Twitter account for our students to start writing.
Right. Now, the no set marks thing is, again, a challenge for Chantel and I, because it's very different than what we've done. It's not that we disagree with it, because I think we agree very, very much with this idea of a mark just not necessarily representing much. Particularly, grade numbers, they don't always reflect everything that needs to be shown or demonstrated on a report card. And so we do want to rely heavily on our conversations and our communications with parents, what we're posting on our Facebook page, and showing them that the students are doing and learning. But we still know that as a very brand new school, this may be something that some parents will struggle with, because they figure if there's no grade attached to a student's report card,
Yep.
that perhaps they're not getting an education. And so this has been a challenge for us as well, because we're trying to venture out into some uncharted territory, with the understanding that not all parents are going to understand where we're going with this.
One of the things in our readings and one of the videos was teacher modeling behavior. And one of them suggested, as teachers kind of finish a project or finish a lesson per se, that they evaluate themselves and post it publicly for students to kind of look at and review. Another thing that we looked at with Sir Robinson was he talked a lot about an alternative school setting, which is kind of what we are. And so we were kind of encouraged just by listening to him, and we've gained a lot of insight of what other people out there are doing, what Finland is doing, what their focus is on, and how they're able to succeed. And now what can we do to apply it to our school setting and our educational setting on a whole in Canada?
Yeah, most definitely. The readings and the videos from Module 3 have definitely been affirming. They've told us that we're on the right track, and when we may have some of those moments where we're a little frustrated or overwhelmed with all this newness and possibly self-doubt, we feel very affirmed and are quite thankful that the timing of this module was really supported what we're doing here.
Agreed.
Some of the curricular designs that fall under the constructivist approach are the humanistic design, a learner-based design, experience-centered design, reconstructionist, and radical design.
Thank you very much for being part of our presentation.
Thanks.
Oh, stay tuned for bloopers. Hi, my name is Chantel Aguilar.
And I'm Elise Cole.
We are going to begin by presenting planning, instruction, and assessment approaches in different curricular designs. First, we're going to take you to our Prezi, the one that we created beforehand, where we connected the different curricular designs. It'll just take a moment to load.
We connected them with their philosophies and the sources behind them. And we're pleased to be able to show it to you in this format.
So looking at the different curriculum designs, we talked about 3 different designs, and then we kind of expanded on from there.
The first one that we discussed was the student. Was the student-based design.
So we should start over.
Well, fuck. Now we have to.
Have we started yet? We started? Oh, we started. And we did the dance. Oh, we did the dance.
Stand in front of the screen.
We're doing dance. I'm not in front of the screen. I'm on the side. And I'm presenting. Planning instruction and assessment approaches in
We need to do this.
different curriculum designs.
You can't see it. Oh, right, because we're going to turn the light off. You almost stepped on Jojo, now he's running away.
Okay.
Are we done?
Yeah, that's how we're starting.